Welcome to the White Lotus channel. Thanks for being here. Deck review, Mattana's Dimir Control. Looks kind of similar to UB Terror, right? But you'll see no terrors. So you kind of have this hybrid. You still have the Thought Scour, Brainstorm, Gurmag Angler plan, but really this deck it's a control deck that has the Exhume option. And as far as your card, strategically, let's just start with this. Actually, let me start with this. If there's anything that you do, I'm going to put 2 links down in the description about Brainstorm. One is a video from 11 years ago, AJ Soccer. He did a video on the basics of brainstorming that you could watch it over and over again, just to learn how to use the card correctly. Because what you have in Dimir Terror shells, it's the Brainstorm mental note setup or Brainstorm Thought Scour. But in a control shell, Brainstorm is going to be used differently. For example, I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail on it. He's going to do a way better job than I am. In a control shell, you typically are not doing Brainstorm on your opponent's end step. Yeah, that's right. He'll break it down as to why, but why you're seeing extra cards on your turn, not their turn, going deeper down into the deck. He does an excellent job. One will be a link to a video. The other is going to be a link to an article. Highly recommend if you want to really get a great grasp on how powerful Brainstorm is and the best way to use it. So strategically, this is a control deck that has the Exhume option. You have 12 creatures in the main deck, no Tolarian Terror. So on a control deck, you're typically trying to control the early turns. But in this deck, you're cycling through. Obviously, optimally, you hope that you have Exhume and a Troll and an Island and a way to pitch to Exhume the Troll out, right? Against certain decks, you're going to probably want Striped Riverwinder, but Troll is usually the go-to. So instead of trying to control the early turn where you're trying to set up the late game approach, the deck will do that on occasion. You'll have to. You're not going to have the Exhume option, and you're going to have to play the control route. So what do we have as far as the deck overall? We got 4 Brainstorms, 3 Thought Scours, which nets a card. Philagi likely nets a card. Lorien Revealed, displayed everywhere. It's even in Vintage now. You can reduce your land count by running off Lorien. 16 lands overall. But strategically, it's a control deck with the Exhume option, preferably Exhuming first, right? That's what you want to do. Rely on the control plan second. What's the optimal opener? Island, Troll, Exhume, Counterspell, Spell Pierce, Brainstorm, Snuff Out. Snuff Out's huge in the deck. Philagi will help you, right? You can, I'm not saying necessarily turn 2, you may have to, but you can, if you don't have Exhume in hand, you can Philagi, net the Exhume. You can, if you need a Snuff Out, you can Philagi, net the Snuff, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, but you're, hopefully if everything goes well, even though it's a controlled deck, you want the Exhume option as early as possible. Sideboard, Dispels for removal, Hydroblast for anti-red decks, Chainer's Edict for anti-terror, Nausea for the go-wide decks, Unexpected Fangs for some more life gain against red, 2 more Nile Spell Bombs for affinity, and other graveyard recursions. You notice it's not a whole lot of play sets. Your play sets are on the creatures. Everything else are on support. So you're cycling, Exhuming. Once you, the way I would play it, once you're sticking your creature, hopefully turn 2, whereas you would defend the initiative on a lot of decks, you're just defending the creature with counter spells. You don't have to necessarily use, especially if you get a Troll, you don't have to necessarily just deal with every creature that comes into play. They require 3 to block it. So pick your choices and pick the creatures specifically that becomes a problem. There is an Agony Warp in here. It's great for the the 3/3 flying indestructible lands that Kenku puts into play. It's a really fun deck to play. I usually pick decks that have done a tournament or have finished place high, but I think there's enough in the shell, and I've played with it enough that I think it has legs. Is it a replacement for Dimir Terra decks? Well, it depends. You're going to power out, if everything goes well, you're powering out creatures much faster than what UB Terra can do. But you would have to play with it and find out. So again, strategically, control shell with the Exhume option. Exhume being the preferable way to go. And then we'll see if you can get there without Exhume. And then just to be redundant, definitely check the links to the Brainstorm video and article in the bottom that AJ Soccer wrote. It is going to help you. Let's get into some games. Match 1, Game 1, unknown opponent. Opening hand. It's doable. We talked about optimal openers. Island. We don't have the troll. The thing with Striped Riverwinder is it's not fetching a land where you can exhume turn 2. So we don't want to just turn 1 Brainstorm. We don't want to do that. But we've got a great opener. We don't need this many creatures in the opener, but we got Snuff Out, Brainstorm, Exhume, Island. When you structure your opening hand, optimal hand, it's not like you're going to get it all the time. You rarely do. You just want as many components to it as necessary that makes the deck do what it does. Let's see what we get. The opponent does mulligan to 4. I offered to redo the match, but he said, no, let's just play it out. So let's do it. We see turn 1 Mountain. I've seen this a lot recently. Turn 1 Mountain can be a lot of different things. It doesn't mean it's just red. It could be Mogwarts. A lot of times I see turn 1 Mountain and they pitch the troll and they're exhuming too. I have no idea what I'm up against currently. All right, so we talked about Brainstorm, right? We don't just pass the turn and then Brainstorm on that. We got to make our land drops. That's a key thing. Brainstorm is better, and this is going to be highly debated, but you'll see this in AJ Soccer's video. Brainstorm is a card better not cast. Sounds kind of counterintuitive. He'll explain the reasons. I'm not going to do it. It's its own video. But we're playing Brainstorm, our main phase, to hit the land drop. That's the only reason that we're doing it. Red-white, basic lands. So I'm thinking, okay, it's Boros of some kind, right? Not necessarily. There's other things that are out there, but I'm thinking this is probably Boros. But we've got Exhume into Striped Riverwinder with Spell Pierce backup. He doesn't do anything. We cycle. With the hexproof creature, there's nothing he can do. So we're okay in that regard. And this is just like the optimal. We're a turn 4, he concedes, double Striped Riverwinder. So we cycle, double Exhume with Counterspell backup. Regardless of what your opponent's playing, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to win the game. Yeah, hexproof creatures. If they're playing black, maybe they have Chainer's Edict or something like that. But when you get this kind of opener, and especially when your opponent mulligans to 4, it's hard to lose. To be honest with you, I think he could probably not mauled, and it's going to be extremely difficult for us to lose this game. Double hexproof, counterspell, snuff out. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Let's go to game. We're going to skip game 2 because there's really not a lot going on there. We do lose it. We didn't draw well at all, but we'll go to game 3, which I think is rather interesting. Match 1, game 3. Certainly not keeping this. No lander. We've got some action here. Thought Scour can help power out Gurmag if necessary. We've got Spell Pierce backup if things got to control. The opponent, so you didn't see it, but he is on a version of Jeskai Wildfire, Jeskai Ephemerate, however you want to refer to it. So we've got some room to play. It's not the optimal hand, but hey, we talked about not going the Exhume option, and can the deck play control? Let's see what happens. You could argue that you go turn 1 tap land. I don't, because I'm trying to power out Gurmag, so I'm going untapped island into Thought Scour. There's no rush. They're typically a slower deck. Now we're just playing draw go, and that's fine. Some people would say, "Why are you spell piercing this?" I'm trying to get cards into the graveyard, so I'm going to take a spell pierce on Geomancer in order to get Gurmag out with counterspell backup. If I hit the land, we hit the land. So we're going to try to put pressure on the opponent. He's going to play. They play Journey, Destroy Evil. I'm fine with this. I mean, I prefer Maul Drifter not to come into play, but we can at least put some pressure on. Would prefer Counterspell here. Relic is going to be a problem. Now, I should have probably slowed that down. The card that I put back was Gurmag Angler. And some people might say, well, you could at least got that out. Here's my thought process on that. And I think it's a really interesting point to discuss. If I'm like, well, let me just go ahead and get Gurmag Angler out now. With 5 cards in the opponent's hand, I figure any creature I play, including the troll, is likely to get destroyed. They're going to destroy Gurmag more than likely, and they've got outs for this. But if they don't have removal, they need 3 creatures. So the best way for me to win the game, in my opinion, is getting troll out instead of Gurmag. So that's why we put the Gurmag back into the deck and got it out of there. But I can see the argument the other way. Like at this point, I mean, you could make an argument that Striped Riverwinder is probably the better creature to have right now. I'm just not sure about that. I still have to win the game. They can be chump blocked. He has no creatures, 3 cards, 4 cards in hand. Kenku is going to put 2 creatures in play, but they need 3 creatures to block. So I'm just trying to I'm hoping that I can draw enough removal and that the troll can get through without any issue at all. I don't think he understood that it requires 3 creatures. I certainly am not trying to downplay the opponent, but I'll say this. The pressure is on for us to win the game. They need 3 creatures to do it. Falagi is no threat to the opponent whatsoever, right? No threat unless I just skip on something and make it a 1/4, but a 1/4 shouldn't be a threat. His concern really is just getting multiple creatures into play. I don't understand bolting Falagi, but the opponent had something, I suppose, that he was thinking. Again, it's not to downplay him. That just caught me off guard. We'll take the Exhume, which is really not doing much for us, but maybe we need it, right? Ephemerate's really bad here. Double Ephemerate is really bad. I'm drawing to very few outs. I might actually be drawing to just 1 out, right? Because Cast Down's not going to get it done. Snuff Out's not going to get it done. Maybe he blocks or attacks incorrectly and we can get through. I'm not sure, but Agony Warp is an out, and I think I'd have to really think it through, but it might be the only out which we draw. No, actually, Agony Warp and Unexpected Fangs, because that would have done the last point in damage. But so this is this is an issue. Like we have a bunch of flying indestructible creatures coming at us. Here's a mistake that I think that he makes again too as well. Again, I'm not trying to downplay the opponent, but he went ahead and he took Relic of Progenitus and exiled it, but he tapped red to do it. But what I think he thinks the game is just over, but that's suboptimal because you've already wasted a bolt. You've got a bunch of creatures flying. I think he thinks he can't lose the game and probably was just on autopilot, but what if you draw a bolt and need it for some reason, right? So we Agony Warp here, which gets us to 2. The prior bolt on Falaji, which didn't need to happen, probably would have cost us the game. Every opponent you play is not going to play exceptionally well, but it was an interesting game that we almost got there. Even if we lost the match, we didn't. We won. It was kind of a gimme in game 1 because we hit 2 Strike for Rewinders very quick and they had no answers for it. But can the deck function against Relic if it has to play the control route and tap out for creatures? We essentially almost got there, right? So I think the deck has legs. It's got some subtleties and nuance to it that takes a little bit of getting used to. But I hope you give it a try. I'm really, really thankful for Mattana's list. The link to all of his information will also be in the description. Thanks for being here. Stay safe and be well.